This Weird Road is intended for a mature audience. Listener discretion advised.
Good evening, folks. This is Ulf Hammerhart, and with me as always,
Boley Thorn.
And no jokey opening today, which I know is a bit different, but the reason is, honestly, folks, we are tackling something a bit different today. It is something we tackled in the earlier days of the show, well, a variation on something we tackled in earlier days of the show, and we'll still have a little humor because we're us, but probably won't have the normal amount of guffaws you're used to because unfortunately, life has come to a point where we need to talk about and tackle, other than my ability to not talk right, a pretty dark subject. I'm sure by now all of our faithful listeners know about the incident that happened in Charlottesville.
Yeah.
And as heathens, Asatru, whatever you want to call yourself, Norse pagans, guys who worship the hairy guys from the north, whatever.
Or just decent human beings.
Right. It's something we can't keep our mouths shut about. We're not real good at keeping our mouths shut anyway. But not just the hate, but the fact that they're crapping all over our runes and our spiritual path in general. So that is what we're going to be talking about today. We had hoped to have the rarity of a guest, but life and circumstances being what they are, he wasn't able to make it. But we're still going to talk about this because what happened there was, to put not too fine a point on it, heinous and nasty. I mean, and the vile things that followed were even worse. I mean, the violence that happened there was horrible. Someone was killed with a car. Lots of people were injured. And certain people, I won't name any particular Cheetos, like to say that there was violence on both sides. But the fact is, the violence all came from the right, from the Nazi side. The other side was just defending themselves. You can't be called violent when you're reacting to violence to try and not get hurt. In my opinion,
99% agree with you. I'm just going to point out both sides are hate groups.
There was a lot of hate getting flung around, but it's not the speech. I've actually been saying something similar to this in defense of something I put on Facebook in my normal persona. If anything we do can be called normal. In that it's not the speech I have a problem. I mean, I have a problem with the speech, but I understand their right. Everybody there's right to free speech, hateful or not. It's not the speech I had a problem with. It's the actions and the fact that on top of the violence that happened there and killing this woman and everything. The assholes then took to one of their media pages, which is now taken down, the whole page, and there's something to be said about that in a bit, and was slandering this woman, calling her, I believe the words were, a fat, childless slut, and like those are reasons to have killed her with a car and make it okay.
I had not seen that.
That was put up on Stormfront hours after the incident happened.
Truth be told, I've been actively avoiding all of this. I
can't blame you for that.
I made some statements on my, as you put it, normal page that got me a lot of hate, I am fairly certain unfriended by a lot of people. And what I was stating was that I hate that these people have put me in a position to have to defend a fucking Nazi.
Well, and it's not the Nazis you're defending, it's their right to free speech, which is different.
Exactly. But they're the ones who are putting me in the position to need to do so.
Yeah. Well, and like I say, I agree that they have the right to say all those hateful things, even though I don't agree with them. It's the actions I have a problem with. It's the action. The actions are what I'm speaking out against.
Right, but we're still talking. This is an instance where, when any other terrorist attack happens, people say, "Well, you can't blame," and I'm going to get shit for this. You can't blame all Muslims for this one person. This was still one person.
Mm-hmm.
One racist asshole ran over another racist asshole who was protesting other racist assholes.
Yeah,
everyone involved were racist assholes.
Well, the car was one guy, but then there was other physical violence that came from that same side of the fence after that. Not a physical actual fence for anyone who wasn't there. I've actually talked to people that were there. There were no actual fences.
That's mob mentality. That's going to happen anytime. In a situation like that is already brimming with essentially emotional violence. Yeah. Everyone's angry, and you take a situation like that, and one person breaks the peace, so to speak, it's going to just explode after that.
I agree with that. You're right on all those counts, but I think that side wanted violence. I think they came there for it because
both sides wanted violence.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's arguable.
There's no maybe. You don't.
That side came with shields and weapons and riot gear.
You don't show up if you think that there were other people that on the other side that weren't also armed.
Oh, I can't say there weren't, but
that's naive to think.
I mean, the only exposure I have is the photos I've seen and the few people I've talked to who were there who were pagans who did not have weapons, but that doesn't mean there aren't people who didn't. You're correct on that, I suppose.
You're not going to show up to an event like that without expecting violence, especially when you're showing up in opposition of a known violent group. I understand that it's worth being there. It is worth risking to tell these Nazi a-holes where they can go. But the moment violence happens, you have to expect it to explode. And you cannot show up to this thing and not expect violence. And if you
or expect at least the high as you're basically saying the high potential for it. There have been plenty of protests against these people and these very group and these types of people where violence has not happened, although the possibility was there. But this time violence did happen, and I think it unfortunately raises the bar and intensifies the possibility of violence at future gatherings.
You're absolutely
future
right.
Protests of these groups.
These things always escalate until they boil over. Now, here's my beef, and it is a very unpopular opinion, but I am 90% certain that if the opposite had happened, that if a BLM member had driven his vehicle or her vehicle, whatever, had committed some major act of violence against the other side, we would not be having this discussion. This wouldn't be an issue. They'd just be like, well, that's just Nazis getting what Nazis deserve. And no one deserves to die for their opinion. Yeah. Not that woman, which people attacked me with, well, you just don't care about black people. Did no one notice that this woman
wasn't black? Yeah.
She was there in defense of the opposition. But so many people want to make it an issue where there isn't and are ignoring the issues that are.
Yeah, and you may be right. That may be the way it would have been handled. We can't say because it didn't get handled that way. But
it has, dude. This stuff has happened. No one when shit exploded in Ferguson, people didn't riot against the violence. People started calling for dead cops. Even though the police officer defended himself and the public in that instance, Ferguson had a lot of problems with their police department. No question about that. I read the report the night that it happened before it even hit the media. I read the officer's report. I saw pictures. This stuff is one-sided. When the supposed fringe group acts against the majority, there's no reports, there's no or when the fringe group acts against themselves. It's not treated as a hate crime. It's not treated... is there a such thing as a goddamn love crime? Have you ever...
I don't think so, no.
I mean, someone could be crass and say, well, rape, but fuck you. That's what I say to people who say things like that.
Right.
Having a special classification for hate crime, I think is a little dumb. But here's what I'm getting at is that it is reporting the violence, everything is one-sided. And yes, we should all be up and against the whole idea that they stand for, that the Nazis stand for.
Right.
But you cannot attack people for their opinions. You can't physically attack people for their opinions. Here in the United States, we have a system of laws that says, hey, you can't just attack people because they say things you don't like.
Yeah.
You also, and this is the reason I'm heated, is because someone actually showed up on my page because I was going off about how these people should not be getting fired from their jobs. As despicable as they may be, these people, I'm sure, have families. They have children to feed. They have homes to upkeep. And when it comes down to it, it is the height of McCarthyism to fire someone for their political views. Their political views are stupid, and I hate them and F them in the face with a brick. But it is still protected speech, and you don't get to tell people how to live their lives.
But the violence they were involved in isn't protected. And they don't know, and I understand they don't know exactly.
You're still talking about
not everybody on that
person.
side threw a punch and things like that.
A person broke the stillness. A person threw a rock into that pond. Pond seems too passive because that was a powder keg.
Full of gasoline.
So one person threw the match into that powder keg, but it was still a powder keg from the start.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that it wasn't. Any protest environment is or has the potential. Anytime you're in a protest environment where emotions are as heavily involved as they're going to be when a hate group's there, you have the potential for violence. As we said earlier, it's going to be a powder keg anyway.
There's potential for violence when there's one hate group, and there were two. So two hate groups almost guarantees that there's going to be violence.
And to double back to something I said earlier, I brought up the Nazi page Stormfront and the despicable things they said. Well, to tell you how bad a group of people they must be, they tried to, the provider that they were using was GoDaddy, and GoDaddy went, nope, you're gone. Well, they were like, well, no problem, we've got this covered. They tried to go to a Russian server, more than one, I think, and the Russians were like, no, get out of here. Now, you have to be bad when when Putin goes, nope.
No, let's keep one thing in mind. The whole Nazi party, the original Nazi party, came about as an opposition to communism. So it is not at all a surprise that Russia, and Putin is still a communist. Whether their government is communist or not, he is.
Right.
So they are still run by communist ideas.
Which makes it irony right there that the Nazis ran to them, number one.
Because that means that they don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah, because these are the guys that kicked the crap out of the Nazis, quite frankly, in the war.
Let's be honest. Russian winter kicked the crap out of Nazis.
But the Russian soldiers had something to do with it, too.
Right.
That's what, not just the people, the land,
whole
Russia as a whole, kicked the crap out of the Nazis.
Mother Nature was like, hey, you know what? Fuck you guys.
And now they're running over to Russia.
Of course, did the same thing with Napoleon.
But now they're running over to Russia thinking they're going to be cyber safe, I guess. And they were like, nope, get out of here. So right now those guys have no home, and I couldn't be happier about that.
They'd have been better off going to Japan.
Because
Japan still has a rather large Nazi-sympathetic population.
They really do. I've seen weird pictures of Japanese people walking around in the whole regalia. It just looks so odd.
Yeah.
With dyed blonde hair and everything.
Yeah.
But, it makes me happy that this place doesn't have a home right now because although I kind of agree with what Bully says about, them not losing their jobs for their political views and stuff, I think they should see some repercussions for the hate they're breeding, for the violence they cause.
Yes, but that needs
so
to be
things
done.
like their Nazi websites not being able to find place. That's pretty good. That seems justice to me. That seems a little bit of poetic justice.
The problem that I have with that, and again, I feel so dirty having to argue this side of it, but when you attempt to silence a group, you disenfranchise more and more people and genuinely make that group stronger.
That actually brings up something interesting, talking about the disenfranchised, because the Nazis, that's how most hate groups get their memberships anyway, is they appeal to people who are already disenfranchised, right?
Right.
Okay, well, something interesting, because I personally
It worked
didn't know
for
this.
the original Nazis. It's worked for basically the ISIS, ISIL, Daesh, whatever you want to call them.
KKK, all of them, any hate group, they all do it.
It's all tied up in taking angry young people, giving them an enemy, and allowing that to divide them.
Not necessarily always young people, even, because
but
young people are more susceptible to it. True
exactly.
enough, but the tie-in that kind of caught my attention was having not been at Charlottesville. I didn't know this until I was on the Tree of Life show with Raven and those ladies last week, and there were people on there who had been at Charlottesville, as I mentioned before, and apparently there were people who got up speaking on the neo-Nazi side who were LGBT and some people who were black, and this confused people. And one lady got up there and apparently said something to the effect of, hey, I'm a black American. I'm here because of this and this. Do I look like a Nazi? And my thought was, no, you may not look like a Nazi, but you are supporting them. Something to be said for that. And this person they were baffled about why a black person and an LGBT person would be on that side of it. And it comes back to the disenfranchised thing.
Right.
They basically just the recruiters, if you will, basically just shifted their focus a little and brought in more appeal to those disenfranchised people,
right,
that were angry disenfranchised people, and used basically probably a slightly modified version of the behavior and the recruitment tactics they've used for generations, and brought those people into it. That's exactly what they did. They appealed to the disenfranchised and angry.
We've done
what
it.
They do.
We've done it before. As a government. Now, here's the thing. Gary, I know you're listening to everything I say and do, but I'm not blaming the government for this violence. I am, however,
Gary is the CIA agent that taps our lines.
NSA, and I do happen to know that I, if not currently, was flagged and followed for quite a while. Know it for fact. So, I don't know if my handler's name is Gary or not, but that's what I had to call him something. Anyhow.
Moving on.
The government, while not responsible for this, is certainly taking advantage of it. A bunch of stuff keeps getting passed without much public knowledge because we're not watching it. We're watching this fight that should have ended 70 years ago.
Yeah. The classic political...
But just like,
maneuver of misdirection.
I brought this up 2 years ago when the Patriot Act got passed for a second time, unaltered, and it is the single most, despite what its name is, it is the single most unpatriotic, unconstitutional bill I've seen in a long time.
Oh yeah, it's pretty despicable.
And it got passed unnoticed because weeks before that, all of a sudden, the Treasury Department mentioned that they were going to put a black woman on the $20 bill. And everyone zoned in on that and was, rah, 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 rah. Now, here's the thing. Andrew Jackson should have never been on the $20 bill anyway. He despised the central banking system, fought his whole life to close it down, and it was a slap in the face to have him on currency, period. At least any currency that wasn't gold-backed.
Right.
Now, they bring this up, and there's this huge debate, and everyone's focused on that instead of the Patriot Act. And lo and
So,
behold, do you have any Harriet Tubman $20 bills?
I do not.
Yeah, neither do I. You know why? Because it never happened. And also because I don't have $20. But
Right, there's that.
It never happened because it was a
diversionary
goddamn
tactic.
diversion. This is a diversion. And this divisive action on the part of the media, which I guess we're somewhat responsible for, but we're speaking out against it.
Against it. We are being media, but we are also speaking out against it, yeah.
The media, the government, takes advantage of situations like this. They blow it way out of proportion, and instead of making it about what it really is, instead of making it about poor, disenfranchised people who are mistreated by the system, they point to what they perceive to be the polar opposite and go, well, it is their fault. The original Nazis did this. The original Nazi party they had no, realistically speaking, you did not get all those angry Austrians, which there's a sleight of hand for the ages. This all started in Austria, and yet the German people are the ones who are blamed for it. You don't get that many people that riled up over actual political issues. You give them a reason to be angry, and you give them an enemy to point it at. And back then, it was Jews, it was the handicapped, it was gypsies, it was blacks, it was gays. All of these groups, because they lumped them all together like that so that they could get everyone in on it. Non-Christian, basically. Yeah. Any non-Christian was on the list if they were too open about it. But that's why I've pointed out in my rant before how we need to defend every person there and their right to free speech.
Yeah.
Because it is only a matter of time. When you dehumanize the people, when you say, well, these people are Nazis, they're not worth, the skin they're printed on, which I agree with, but when you dehumanize them in such a way and you start stripping their rights, when do you go, at what point do you draw the line? And like I said there, as ironic as it is, it does come down to the whole first they came for the Jews. Because when you start stripping people's rights based on a political idea or a physical difference or ideological differences, whatever, when you start stripping their rights based on things like that, it is only a matter of time before you are one of the targets. And we are non-Christian, where we defend the LGBTQ LMNOP community. I'm just getting everybody in there. But we're, that's what she said. Take a drink, Alex. Anyhow, we have to defend everyone, or it's not good for anyone.
I agree. And I do think this is the time. We really are getting to a point in history. We're at a time where it's a call for action. It's a time for action. It's a time to stand up and speak up. But action and stand up, when I say those words, do not mistake me. Do not think I'm calling for violence. Because if you answer violence with violence, now this may sound weird coming from a Norseman, coming from a Viking or what have you, but, if
we've grown in the last, 1,000 years.
Defending yourself is one thing, but do not bring violence to answer violence. Don't sink to their purposes. Don't go to the Nazi rallies and try to incite violence. Try to incite understanding. Because a lot of what this is about for me, about why I wanted to do this show, about what sickened me when I saw a lot of the Charlottesville pictures, were all the flags with Oswala and several of the other runes and Odin's eyes.
I had to point out to
all over
you
the place on them.
On Facebook, you shared that picture that said, we're taking our runes back.
Yeah, there's a rune on there that at one point
one of theirs used to be a swastika, and they still have not changed it back. It should be there.
Yeah, you're talking about Swallow, the one that
yes,
Swallow. I think I'm saying it right. looks like a lightning S basically
Yes.
to a lot of people.
The Nazis used it
They
as
use that
part
one
of
for
their
the SS symbol, for the
Yeah.
Hitler's elite. So they've, hate groups have corrupted our symbols from way back. They've corrupted the swastika, the swallow rune a little bit. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing some of these. Now they're taking to using the swallow or Odin's rune, as it's also known,
Yeah.
and the Odin's eye, and a bunch of our other runes. I'm tired of seeing this. They're
Well,
not just corrupting our.
Hell, the Odin's Eye was taken up during the Crusades because it looks like a cross.
Looks like a cross, but they've corrupted so much of. It's already bad enough that people think that there are enough people out there who don't know enough about Asatru or heathenry that when they see those assholes, they think they are heathenry. They think they're the majority when they're actually the minority. They're just louder because the squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Right.
And on top of that, now they've claimed or tried to claim and dirty up basically so many of our runes that I can't stand it anymore. I can't sit
Right.
by and be silent. I'm speaking out about it here on the show. I spoke out on Raven's show about it. Myself and several others are planning on going to some counter protests where we can to, again, not to incite violence, to incite understanding, to try to get to voice our opinions about reclaiming our runes, about them ruining the runes.
This is my fix for that. For the whole thing. Protesting and counter-protesting, it's just protesting, let's be honest. It's all protesting. But don't do it in the same space. You don't want violence? Don't be where they can reach you. Because of the media, because every single person has a voice given to us by the internet and by the First Amendment, not in that order.
Definitely not in that order.
Little known fact, Washington had the internet. But it was just him, so it was just kind of him typing letters to himself.
They call that a typewriter.
It is. He invented Tweeter. Anyhow. Sorry, off topic. Don't be there. You can protest and you can put your protest out there. You can have it live streamed and everyone in the world that wants to see it can see it, and you will be out of arm's reach of a Nazi. And hey, Nazis, you won't have to look at them dirty minorities. If you don't go to their goddamn protest, you fuckbags! Anyhow. Don't be there. Like, be present at your thing. But don't schedule them across the street from each other. Because the second person to show up, like the second group, is inviting violence. If you know you are hated, and you go to where you know you are hated, you're asking for someone to throw the punch. The flipping, what are the Westboro people? They have made careers out of it. True, but they've made careers out of going to places where they knew they weren't wanted and waiting for that lawsuit swing to happen. They intentionally bring violence on themselves, and we call them assholes for doing it, but we don't say the same thing about people who go where they know they're not wanted, and incite violence. The second person there is asking for it.
But I think
not
there's
asking
a
to be
difference
hit.
between trying to make a point, which a lot of counter-protesters are. They're not trying to incite violence. A lot of them are just trying to make a point. Whereas the Westboro people in that ilk, as you pointed out, are trying to incite the violence. They want that.
Where do you make that distinction? You're still showing up at a place where you know violent people are riling themselves up, and you are making yourself a target. For what end? You can still make your point if you're saying it somewhere else. You're not going to change their mind. By being there, you are further disenfranchising them. You are proving their point that these dirty minorities is here taking up my job.
Likely as not, if you stage a protest where they're going to show up, the same thing's going to happen.
But then they're the ones at fault. They are the ones who came in after the fact. They're the ones who invaded that space.
So it's all about who to put at fault?
No.
I mean,
no.
When you look at it that way.
No. It's about making your point without putting anyone else at risk. Because let's be honest, the two sides here are not the only ones at risk. The people who are at the most risk are the police officers who have to go out there and to defend both sides of that. They have to stand between raging people, and they have to take it whether they agree with either side. And no one wants to defend a Nazi.
Right.
But police officers are being asked to defend BLM activists who quite vocally call for the blood of cops constantly.
I saw a picture the other day that cop had to have probably hated his job that day because he was at,
Yep.
I don't think it was Charlottesville, but it was at a rally where you could clearly see
25, 26-ish-year-old black cop
in good shape, and you can see the KKK members behind him.
And you could just see the God damn it written all over his face.
Like, I'm doing my job, but this is one of the days where
I commend him for doing it.
Absolutely. I agree 100% on that.
But you have someone who is hated by both sides of that argument, who is being forced by our capitalist government, by our whole system.
And by the very job they signed up for.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
They're being forced to defend two groups that hate each other and that hate them.
For different reasons.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, though, the best counter-protest or other protest, as you put it, that I've seen or heard about lately, this had me in hysterics. There was a... Huh?
The walkathon?
No, that's good too, though. I know the one you're talking about there. Yeah. And you can share that story with our listeners in a moment.
Yeah.
In, I think it was Tennessee, I believe the particular hate group that day was the KKK, showed up. No, it wasn't neo-Nazi. Showed up for a rally.
Yeah.
And a clown school or clown college showed up in counter-protest.
Yeah.
And it was great because they showed up all in clown regalia, if you will, all in clown form. And every time the Nazis would shout, "White power," which they're very vehement about at first, the clowns are like, "What? White flour?" and begin throwing flour in the air, like, the cooking product. And they're like, "No, white power," and they get a little louder. And the Nazis are like, "Oh, and the clowns are like, "Oh, white flowers," and begin throwing white flower petals everywhere, little white flowers at them. And they're a little confused. They're getting madder now. According to the article I read, veins are pulsing, eyes are bulging. Oh, and I get so into that part, I always forget to mention. At the very beginning of the rally, when they first got there and saw the clowns, the clown I use in the other meaning of the term, the idiot that was leading the haters, he rushed at the clowns to try and do them violence, and the cops drug him to the concrete and cuffed him and took him away early. But, all his little hater buddies, they continued this. And so, they get the flower thing and their eyes are bulging. They're getting completely pissed. I'm
right.
No PC about it. Completely pissed. And they're white power. And
I think I've already used the word fuckbag. I think you could say pissed.
You got a point there. And at this point, the clowns are like, "Oh, tight shower," and they whip out those portable camp showers and all try to cram in it to clean up, like they think the Nazis what. And at this point, they're defeated, and the winds are out of their senses. They're kind of like, "White power?" And the female clown steps forward, and she's like, "Oh, we understand now. Wife power!" And they all grab the male clowns and hoist them up and run around screaming, "Wife power, wife power!" Completely took the wind out of their sails.
Nice.
That is the best counter to hatred I have ever heard.
That is fan-damn-tastic.
And I want to reread the article so I can get the name right of the clown organization that did that, because I love you guys. I seriously do. But I know what you're talking about too, and people, if there's anybody there in our listening audience who hasn't heard this is a good story too.
Okay. During
counter hatred,
during my I hate myself for having to say it debate with the internet, I had an ex-girlfriend who I felt very good friends with, pop up, and she's very emotional about it. And I was trying to hold I guess it's stupid on my part to try and hold a logical debate about an emotional thing.
Yeah, logic and emotion don't usually work together too well.
And she's full of misinformation, saying that it's illegal to fly Nazi flags. It's not illegal to fly Nazi flags.
Not. A lot of people under that misconception.
It is
not
protected
illegal.
speech. It is not a call to violence. It's just...
It's not something any of us like to see flying, but it's not illegal.
Right. But, you know, if you were to go over here to the Outlaws and tell them that they couldn't fly their Confederate flag, good luck getting off their lawn.
Yeah. A lot, anyway.
Here in Kentucky, well, I meant specifically over there.
Yeah.
Here in Kentucky, and specifically in Louisville, castle law protects a lot of things. It protects my car, even if I'm out on the street. If I'm on a public street and I see someone trying to get into my car, like I walked into a restaurant and I see someone trying to get into my car, legally, I am allowed to shoot that person. Now, you shouldn't, because it's just things.
Right.
If you are capable of shooting them, there's no reason to not go ahead and brandish that ability without actually killing another person. But anyway, castle law protects a lot. And while I would never fly a Nazi flag, if I did, and anyone came into my yard, including a police officer, unless that police officer has a warrant in hand, I am allowed to defend my property. And she's like, no, they could yank it down, and you would go to jail, and all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, you're misinformed, and when you spread misinformation like that,
things get worse.
You're part of the problem. And Miss Miller, I appreciate you, and I care about your friendship, but you're just wrong. And but Mr. Goodman, he and I went back and forth, but it stayed civil, and because he saw what I was getting at, is that I was in defense of First Amendment rights, not in defense of Nazis. Personally, I would like to punch every Nazi I find. I would like to punch some smart into them, but that's not how it works. When you do that, you prove their speech. You prove their ideology. But Mr. Goodman shares this this link with me that shows, I want to say it's Norway. It's one of the Scandinavian countries. Norway, Denmark.
It is in that region of the world.
Something like that. Where they have, for some reason, neo-Nazis gather there every year for a march. And it's something like a 3K or something. Like, it's not big.
Yeah.
But
this town, knowing that it was coming,
they set up a drive, and they basically set up a donation to where each member that was there marching, each Nazi that was there marching, was contributing to a fund that would get people out of the Nazi movement if they wanted it.
Yep.
That would help get them out of the country.
And they raised a lot of money for it, too.
And it's something like 10,000 euros if even one person reaches the end of the march. And they have markers throughout written on the street saying, if you pass this point, you've helped us donate this much money. And it is the most beautiful form of protest I've ever seen. Because no one's throwing a punch.
I mean, they were living at the end when they found out, but they...
No, it wasn't even at the end, because they have those signs set up at the beginning. They have the ability to walk away, and they don't.
Yeah.
And, they're mad by the time they get to the end. But no one's throwing punches. No one's certainly not driving through a crowd of people in their car. It is the most peaceful anti-protest I have ever heard of.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the most awesome things I've heard.
And it is, you make the people who do it feel stupid for doing it. That's how you...
I think that may be a lot of why they were living, is it made them feel stupid. And good, it should.
Yeah, but I mean, that's how you get through to people. You make them realize their own foolishness.
Yeah.
And they will... If they feel like they're coming to it on their own, they're much more likely to accept what's the new information.
Yeah. And
so But when you go in swinging, you set them automatically up to defensive action.
And a lot of people think that once you're in that you can't get out. It's
not Scientology.
Hate thought it seeps pretty deep.
It can't be Scientology because for one, science is in the word there, and they clearly don't follow that.
Yeah, that is true. But there's a guy, now forgive me, I don't know his name. There's a whole
Joe Bob McGillicuddy.
There was a whole biographical film made about him and everything called Erasing Hate, where this guy, he'd been in prison and he had Nazi paraphernalia, hate paraphernalia, and unfortunately some runes that he associated with hate, even though the runes are not associated with hate, tattooed on him. And when he came around to another way of thinking, he got married, got a family, realized there was another, you know what I mean, that there was another way to live his life without all this hate in it. This guy went through...
Brian Widener?
Yes, went through a very long and painful process of having all these tattoos lasered. A lot of them were on his face, too, so that couldn't have been pleasant.
Oh, yeah, I'm seeing a picture of him now. That could not have been fun. But getting them probably wasn't terribly fun either.
And I've seen the after picture. He's completely cleaned up now. He looks like a different person. And
well, he is a different person.
Yeah, exactly. And that's you can't ask for more of a outward representation of literally being a new person, So if he's willing to go that far, that proves that you can get out of that mindset. It's not once you're there, you're stuck, which a lot of people think.
It's not Mormonism.
There's also an argument coming out of the woodwork now that I don't agree with. I'm not going to say it's wrong, but I don't agree with it. That extreme racism is a form of mental illness. I don't think it is. Partly because just what I said, this is something you can get over without meds or something to help you cope with it.
I think what the science states basically is that type of thinking, it's not necessarily racism. It is the us v them mentality. It falls into the same sort of brain dysfunction that allows people to be hyper religious. That makes magical thinking. And I'm sorry to our magic using audience. I've been there. I just don't do that anymore.
Right.
But for the people who think that A plus B equals D, though that is a form of disconnect that can be graphed, that can be shown in brain scans and stuff like that. It is a form, but I'm not saying anyone should get disability for being a racist.
Yeah, because my point of view on it is, and I know there are plenty of forms of mental illness out there. I know plenty of people that grapple with it. I'm not ashamed to admit I grapple with some mental and emotional problems. But
I nearly clocked a coworker the other night.
Other than the obvious mental problem of you being my friend, there's that.
I do struggle with that.
Your PTSD of his?
Mine.
Okay, I had to make sure.
No, I warned him multiple times, and he keeps coming up. I work in a very loud environment.
Yes.
And there's a lot of movement and everything like that, so I'm kind of on edge 9 hours out of the night. Right?
All right.
I was in the back of my vehicle. I was rearranging boxes and everything like that, and he came up and, for lack of a better term, goosed me. And my fist was literally an inch away from his nose. And it's only because of my own training and self-discipline that I managed to
at the last moment who that was.
I managed to not splatter this person's face. And I told him then. I got livid. I've told him, because this is the kind of thing he likes to do. He thinks he's playing. He thinks he's joking. But I've told him, I'm like, look, I've told you numerous times that I suffer from PTSD. This is a stressful environment. You can't do that. There might be other people that can accept it. I'm not one of them. And he still has it in his head that I'm playing with him.
Or that you're full of it.
Yeah. And
he could be one
the next time I may slip.
He could be one of those poor sods that thinks PTSD is bullshit, which means, thinks mental problems are BS. And I understand, I completely agree with the legitimacy of mental issues. However, I think I think when you start to say and start to put out there that extreme racism is a mental issue, you are giving these asshats something to bow to as an excuse. Oh, it's not my fault. It was brainwashed into me. Oh, it's not my fault. I have a mental disorder. While that may be the case, while as you said, it may fall under that case for some people, the ones that it's not the case for are going to use it as an excuse.
I just came to something, though. That's kind of poetic. In that, the Nazis also dismantled people with mental illnesses.
Yep.
So by telling them, hey, for being a Nazi, you have a mental disorder. For purists of the idea,
oh, they're going to grind their teeth to dust over
they're going to have so much cognitive dissonance, they might turn inside out. It would be great to watch. The Adventures of Inside Out Boy. Do you remember that? Okay.
A little bit, yeah.
The boy he went around
the
swing. I was just thinking
that would be the sound. When they flip inside out. But we're tackling a lot of issues through this tonight, and I'm going to go back to, the runes.
They're being kind of is a huge sore spot.
It really is. They're just being, quite frankly, pissed on. And I mean, they have been for a long time, but it's getting worse. And I've had friends ask me because, and as is obvious if you listen to some of what Boley was saying about his side of things earlier, he and I are on different sides about this particular issue. Not the rune issue.
No,
we're right there on that.
We're not really about difference. We're not really on opposite sides of this. We're on the same side.
I mean, hold on, just see what I'm saying. On what I'm about to say here.
Okay.
In that, I feel like I can no longer remain quiet. He agrees with me on that. But part of my way of not being quiet is there will be a protest coming near our town soon, and I am going.
Lexington?
Yes, in Lexington, and I plan on going. Not to incite violence. I know violence could happen. I'm accepting that fact before I go. But I am going to counter protest, despite what Boley says of having the protest another place, to let them know that I think they're ruining our runes. I want them to stop it. I know it probably won't make it down on them, but there will be other people that gather to watch these things. There always are. And maybe it can get through to some of those people who don't know that, hey, these symbols they're using are something else. They are taking something and they're bastardizing, they're spoiling it. Like, I didn't know for years, for example, growing up, younger, I was an adult before I knew, or almost an adult, before I knew that the swastika wasn't Hitler's symbol, that he had stolen it from multiple cultures, not just Asatru. The swastika or some variant of it, and in some cases under different names, were used in Tibetan cultures. It was a Tibetan good luck charm. It's
a Buddhist in general. It's a Buddhist good luck charm. There's Native Americans used it. It was called a sun wheel.
Sun wheel, yeah. It's been called the fly foot in some cultures.
Kiss your mother with that mouth, Damien?
Not anymore. She's been sick. But the point is, it was these things have been ripped from other cultures and turned into symbols of hate. The swastika, unfortunately, has been so seeped in hate, I don't know if it can be reclaimed. Because there have been people who've tried and they've gotten shit for it because people think they're racist. Because Hitler seeped that so badly in it.
Right.
Same for the Sawalo rune, the S rune that he used for his SS soldiers.
That is the bastardization. That's the bastardized swastika.
Yeah.
That's what that is. That
he took two of those and...
But it used to be the swastika, and we've had to change it.
Break it apart.
To make it acceptable.
Right. But like I said, he used that too.
It's language. That's like saying if the Nazi Party had decided to just take the Arabic letter D and use that, would we no longer call people dicks?
I don't know. That's an interesting state, but that's an interesting point of thought. But I still think that we owe it to ourselves to try and claim those things back, to stand up and not just let them have them.
Right.
And their excuse for using Because if you'll notice the similarity between a lot of things, they like to use the old swallow rune, the big O, as some people will call it, and the Odin's Eye are because they claim to connect most with Odin, which is why another term that Nazis use for themselves are Odinists, specifically.
Well,
I really think Odin would smack the holy dog shit out of them.
I have to kind of disagree. There may be Nazis who are Odinists, but these are not squares and rectangles. There are plenty of people who consider themselves a follower of Odin that are not racist.
No, I agree with that, but I mean, a lot of the racists,
like I say, I'm a Lokian.
A lot of the racists who identify as also true use the specific word Odinist to identify themselves. Is what I'm saying.
But they're dumb.
Oh, incredibly! That's the whole point of all this. When you come back to Nazis, is they're dumb.
Right.
They're hate mongering idiots that don't know anything else.
What I was going to say about being there to protest their protest.
Mm-hmm.
It's not anti-protest. You are protesting. Just like there's no such thing as reverse racism.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. We're protesting their protest. Right. You're right.
Okay. What I was getting at is that no one in the history of human existence has ever won an argument. No one's ever changed another person's mind by yelling at them.
Right.
So I think that the same points can be made. And I sound like a coward. I fully acknowledge that. But the same points can be made from a safe location. And if you are saner and quieter, people who don't know are more likely to listen. And if you're just out there screaming at the other side, it's just noise. No one hears what you're saying. That's why I think that protesting them is absolutely a noble venture and should be done, but when you are the second party on site, when a place is designated for one thing and someone else shows up, that person is the one inciting violence.
I can see your point there, but
because you are infringing on someone else's space that was there beforehand, that had set aside that time and that space for their thing.
I can see your point on that, but one thing I know you do agree with me on is that this is a time for us to stand up and to no longer remain silent. I've said before that as heathens, we're big on community. We say that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And
speaking of which, 5316 Barstown Road, Louisville, Kentucky, this Friday.
Yes, and the third Friday of every month now.
What is this Friday?
I want to say 25th?
25th. August 25th. This is going to air tomorrow night, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the day after this airs. Show up. Show us that you love us. Or don't. Come throw rocks at us.
Show up to debate with us, which there's actually somebody that may be showing up at the pub to debate some of this, so that'll be interesting.
I will still point out, can we please stop calling it a pub moot? A, no longer held in a pub. And two, that drives people away who want to show up with their kids, but think that it's pub related, and it's not. It's no longer held at Wicks. It's not in a pub.
It's just a terminology. But people are afraid of words that much.
Says the person who's bitching about the words that Nazis are using.
I'm with you about the symbols Nazis are using, which are also words in this case, so it's a little weird. But
so, no, here's the point. It's no longer held in a pub. There's no point in calling it a pub moot.
Well, then the monthly heathen moots.
There we go. That wasn't hard.
I guess the point was moot.
Exactly. I hate when people say the point is mute.
Yeah, they get that completely wrong.
I'm like, are you stupid? Those are two different words with two different meanings.
But this is a time to stand up and be heard, because what I was saying about community is that was a good point to interject that in, though.
Yes.
Is that
that's why
usually heathens get back to the community fairly quietly. You know, we just do what we do through our jobs or whatever ways we want to get back by making things or whatever. And
many of us just live the life.
Yeah, we just live our life and get back that way. But right now, I think we're living in very scary times, folks. We're living in times where I feel like Nazis, not everybody's going to agree on this, but I feel like Nazis are trying to get a real foothold again on U.S. soil. And a time where, for the first time since, the 80s, we're living under the slight specter of nuclear threat. I mean, these are not times to keep your mouth shut anymore.
As far as the nuclear threat is concerned, I think Kim Jong-un would have a better chance hitting us with a slingshot than any of their technology.
Well, yes, but he's not the
but
only crack. He's not the only madman with his finger on the trigger.
Here's the
at this
thing:
point.
if he launches against China, the whole world is fucked.
Oh, you're not wrong.
Instead of letting it go, everyone's going to launch and everyone's going to die. Well, everyone north of the equator.
Yeah.
So now's a good time to move to Brazil. Probably not the best choice of words, considering we were talking about Nazis.
Yeah, ironic.
I'm sorry for that.
He just meant the location because it's on the other side of the equator.
Yeah.
But that is supposedly a place where a lot of Nazis are in a hide around the place.
It's not a supposed.
Well, it's definite.
There's still lots of place names that reflect
the fact that it happened. Yeah.
Anyhow, no clones involved. Just get south of the equator. And really, it seems new for millennials and stuff like that. But you and I, we've lived through the Red Threat.
Yeah.
It was a scary time, but it was also just a matter of showing my bullheadedness during a video session where we were being shown. I was in the 4th grade. They were showing anti-communist propaganda to a room full of 4th graders. Okay,
boy,
and so at one of the points when the film stopped, I asked my teacher. I'm like, "Hey, this actually sounds like biased, but not a bad system at its core." I was put out of class.
Wow.
For saying that communism is a viable form of government. It would be without the people.
Yeah.
If it were run by machines, I'm sure our machine overlords, which are coming, will probably default to communism.
Most likely. But even to point back in that point in history you're talking about, though, then, I was going to say that the scary times like this are the times to be vocal and to not be silent. That's proof because during the Red Scare, people wanted to be silent. The times when you want to be silent, when you want to sit in a corner and just push it all away, are the times when you need to stand up and say something. And the Red Scare was good proof of that because people, it was a scary time. The scare was a definitely accurate part of that name, but people didn't keep their mouths shut about what they thought. And that's the only way you achieve change is you have to speak out about it. Well, it's one of the ways to achieve change, I suppose.
I was about to...
you have to speak out about it. You can't be silent and expect to be part of the solution.
Right.
You can't be silent and expect to get something done, and then after the fact and somebody else gets something done, that.
Well, you can. It just makes you a dick.
So if it's scary, if this stuff we're talking about, if it worries you, if it scares you, good. It should scare you. It's scary shit. Use that to galvanize yourself to get up and do something about it. And again, I am not in any way condoning violence. I'm not saying do anything violent. Write your congressman. Form peaceful protests.
Right.
I may look into actually trying to form some sort of Reclaim Our Ruins protest on our own.
Right.
You put a good idea in my head there. Things like that. Apparently, contact clown schools. They do good stuff. But above all, use your damn voice.
Right. With that, we're going to need to cut. We spoke straight through the normal break time we would have.
Probably, and then some.
Yeah. So we're at 59 minutes, basically. So we're going to get out of here. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for listening to us run our mouths.
We're good at it, and nobody else will let us do it, so definite thanks for that.
Thanks for PTRN. All the information will be on the video. So go ahead.
Again, as corny as this sounds, we love our listeners. And, just one more time on my way out the door, I'm going to say, don't remain silent. Let your voices be heard. We can do something. Inaction does nothing. See you next week.
Keep your wits as sharp as your swords. And for those who only get this on YouTube, put the hammer down on that like and subscribe button. Talk to you later. Bye.